What's your legacy going to be? Hi, I'm Brian Pombo. Welcome back to Brian J. Pombo Live. Today I want to talk a little bit about legacy and a very particular story of legacy, Mr. Gene Shepard. If you're not familiar with Gene Shepard, it's worth looking into. This is a great biography. Pretty thick, kind of heavy. Excelsior You Fathead is what it's called. And it is based on one of his sayings. Who was Gene Shepard? Gene Shepard is someone that right off the bat you may not know who it is. But if I told you a movie that he narrates, that he wrote the story for, wrote most of the dialogue for, you'll probably recognize it. It's a little movie called A Christmas Story. Okay, A Christmas Story is that one of, and even if you don't know the name, you'll recognize probably the story, because it's that story of the little kid, Ralphie, and his little brother, Randy, when he wanted a Red Ryder BB gun for Christmas. Okay, that whole story was based, loosely based on stories of his childhood growing up in Hammond, Indiana. His name was Gene Shepard. Those stories originated on a radio show that he used to put out of New York City on WOR radio. And you can still find old recordings of them. And I say old. It won't be that old for some of you in the audience. We're talking I think the earliest ones were from the late 50s, but a lot from the 60s and 70s. And even some from the 80s, his radio shows where it was mostly him monologuing, him sitting there talking about life, every once in a while going into a story either from his childhood or teenage years or in the military. So, fabulous stuff. There's a lot of free stuff out there on the internet. You can listen to him. Very, very, very interesting character. This guy did a little bit of everything. He did TV. He did a lot of TV documentaries after that in the 70s. PBS used to put on, even this before Christmas Story came out in the 80s. They were putting on plays of his stories. They were having him do little documentaries where he did little kind of video essays and so forth. And it goes on and on. The guy did a lot of stuff. He actually had other movies made based on his work also, but none of them did as well as A Christmas Story. And it's one of those things he'll always be known for, or if anyone knows who he is, it's going to be mostly because of that movie and all of the merchandising and everything that came off of that movie. But this is a story of the guy's life, and there's a very interesting thing about his life. His whole life, he was looking to make an impact, to really get attention. And he got a lot of attention. In fact, he was really popular. He was very popular. And he was, in the middle of the 60s and a lot of the social revolution going on. He stood out as somebody who was talking against everything without actually siding completely with hippie culture, or definitely not siding completely with the conservative, everyday mainstream. I mean, he kind of played the middle while at the same time being very much a nonconformist. And so he got a lot of attention. He did a lot of speeches, got a lot of attention from all sides, and he always had a following, but it was never enough. He was one of these guys that just always needed more and more attention and never felt like he had enough. At least that's what I always get from interviews, from things I've read about him. Is one of those interesting characters I love reading about because he was so talented, had just talent just pouring out of him, very skilled at his craft of storytelling and other things. But one of these guys that was never satisfied, never fully satisfied, and not in a good way. Not in the sense of, none of us want to be really satisfied. We want to continue growing and building on what we do our entire life. But he always had an edge where he wanted to make an impact, but it was never enough. And I think if we're not careful, the same thing's true if you see anything about Orson Welles, by the way, the famous director and actor. He had the same thing, and a lot of the interviews at the end of his life were the same way. A lot of regrets, a lot of I wish I would have gone into politics or done something else. I wish I would have done more of this or that. And always felt like he never really did what he was meant to do. So my real question is, when it comes to legacy, what do you want to leave behind? What do you really want to focus on while you're here? You know, if you really do have a good chunk of life and you aren't taken down by the coronavirus, or you aren't taken down by, a speeding car when that's no fault of your own, if a freak accident doesn't take you out too early, what do you want to leave behind? What will you have hoped you would have done? In my case, and I think in most people's case, if you really think about it, the real mission, in a sense, should be to do what you were meant to do, type of thing. That whole destiny thing, like I've talked about in the past. And I think if I could have done that, I'd be happy. If I feel like I did what I was supposed to do, as opposed to just what I wanted to do, or what I felt I should do, if I could do what I'm supposed to do and hit those points, whatever they are, because I don't really know what it is, and you don't either. You don't really know what it is. You got a feeling for it, and you're headed in that direction, hopefully. But I think that's where you got to focus on, and not try too hard to get attention. Not try too hard to be something bigger than life. You can be bigger than life. You can make an impact. Those aren't necessarily bad things. But I think if you make that your whole goal in life, you're gonna always be disappointed. You're gonna always be relatively unhappy. And the sad thing about Eugene Shepard is he always seemed to be a little bit too unhappy. Had great work, very bright guy. Had amazing stuff. Like I said, look into his stuff. It's fabulous. At least I like it. It's great, both from a satirical standpoint and a philosophical standpoint. I mean, he had a lot of interesting thoughts. But you got to make sure you don't fall into that category of the person that's always striving to reach something that is unreachable. And it's unreachable for a reason, because if you got it, you wouldn't know what to do with it, right? So, a little bit deeper tonight. Sorry about that. Hopefully it didn't go too deep on you. But if you're interested in business, in talking about business and thinking about these things and finding ways to be able to grow your life better, while at the same time keeping in mind all the practical concepts that are necessary to build a business, make enough money to survive, and be able to, hit all your wildest dreams, then keep watching these videos. We do these every night. Go check out brianjpombo.com. Right now we're having a little hiccup on the website, but just bookmark it and come back to it. We've got videos going back all the way to last year. Almost 365 videos. We're getting close. So, we'll be back here tomorrow. In the meantime, get out there and let the magic happen.